Hi, welcome to the Music Lab at writingmusicaltheater.com. My name is Philip Seward, and this is a short video to give a bit more of an explanation for what the idea of musical modeling means in the sequence of this lab. Musical modeling means different things to different people, and this short video, I hope, will give you a chance to understand why we want to begin to do that. First of all, to begin to think as a writer, as opposed to an audience member watching a show and enjoying a show, to begin to think about it as a writer, to look for structural elements in the show that we're modeling, and between the three shows, to find maybe commonalities in how they are structured, and obviously at the same time differences in how they are structured, and use those, both the commonalities and the differences, to think about our own work. If we've picked three different shows, it can help us explore various means of musical storytelling. How does one show tell a story musically versus another? Is one a more traditional, as in from the golden age of music theater, or is one more contemporary? Does one predate the golden age so that it's a little bit more of a vaudevillian method of storytelling? Also, the choice of three shows to model will allow you and me to have a common reference point in our interactions with each other. So in my response to you, I can make reference to one of these shows, and you would be able to follow that as somebody who's equally familiar with the show. And last but not least, it develops a set of examples. So we have an example of, oh, this song in your show that you're writing should function like this song in another show. And we have a reference point for an example of how this could work. I think those are all good reasons for modeling. When you select the shows, pick two that you know really well, things that you like, and then pick one of these following shows that you don't know. Something that will be new to you and something that actually I know, but I'll be getting to know the two that you've picked, and you get to know one of these: Showboat, Kiss Me Kate, South Pacific, Guys and Dolls, Candide, The Most Happy Fella, My Fair Lady, The Music Man, She Loves Me, Cabaret, A Little Night Music, They're Playing Our Song, The Mystery of Edwin Drood, Aspects of Love, The Secret Garden, Passion, Avenue Q, and Billy Elliot. Now, as you look at those, you can see that some of them are from earlier periods of music theater history and some a little bit later. So that gives a span of time from 1927 to contemporary times. Billy Elliot is running right now, as actually are revivals of some of the others. So hopefully you'll find one in there that you don't know but that might be of interest to you. So getting started, what do we need to get started? You could do this with a cast album, a story synopsis. Better yet, if you can get a script and a score, those would be really helpful. The cast album would be sufficient to do this exercise if that's all you have available to you. A story synopsis would be helpful. You're going to write also one of your own, but I think one of your own might be a little more expansive than what you might find elsewhere. For example, inside the cast album, there might be liner notes, and you would be able to reference those. Hopefully you can either read between the lines or maybe listen to the score and get a little bit more familiarity with what's specifically going on in a scene so that you can expand on that a little bit. A script and a score are not always available because, as you know, many of the works are under copyright protection and difficult to obtain. So a place to look for that might be in your local library. As opposed to a score, you might, I guess, look at vocal selections. I don't tend to like those as well, but you know, it's possible to use them if you don't have other choices. As for a story synopsis, usually now you can Google for such synopsis and find one somewhere on the web. If you're doing a show that has a more contemporary run, either in revival or is new, then likely you're going to find a website for the show. Otherwise, Wikipedia probably offers a synopsis for many shows. I'm not particularly a fan of Wikipedia in terms of always being able to rely on that information, but it can help you get started at the very least, and you can take it from there. Let's start with a show that I would prefer you not use, but one that you might know, The Sound of Music. This show is based on the story of Maria von Trapp. It opened on Broadway in 1959, and it's more famous perhaps as a motion picture, which was released in 1965, which is possibly how most people know this show. The stage play is different, and I want to select this basically because we have a familiarity with it, most people do, and because also I don't particularly want to have you use it as the musical you profile. Although you could, but the reason I don't is because I wanted to use it in this example, and because also if you choose to profile a show of Richard Rodgers, I think some of his other works are probably stronger in terms of being well written for the stage. So bearing that in mind, this is just to give you an idea of how we might proceed with musical modeling. The first thing we might want to do is consider who are the characters, who are the main characters. In this case, Maria and Captain Georg von Trapp. Who are the secondary leads? Well, that's a bit confusing in this show, but in every show there's going to be a couple of distinctions, and it won't be true to form. The Mother Abbess is a secondary lead. I believe Elsa Schrader and Max Detweiler are also secondary leads. In the film, those characters don't sing. So just as a way of understanding yet more differences between what you might know of The Sound of Music and what actually I want to model. So that's both an interesting point in terms of if you want to get to know a show, is it good to see a film? Well, I think it's not bad to see a film necessarily, but I think it's important to bear in mind differences between how something plays on film and how something plays in the theater, because they are different mediums. And I think this show is a much more successful film than probably it was in Broadway. I've never seen a Broadway production of this show myself, just to be upfront about it, although I've done a couple of productions, so I'm a bit familiar with it from that side. Another structural issue that I don't really talk about later on is who are the dance leads. A lot of times in a traditional Broadway show structure, you'll have the leading man, the leading woman, which is Maria and Captain von Trapp. Then you'll have the secondary leads, which are here, and then you'll also have the dance leads, and those are people who primarily are hired to dance. They sing a little bit, but they're primarily dancers. And Liesl von Trapp and Rolf Gruber are the ones who do the dance scene 16 going on 17. He's obviously the young boy ingenue, and she is the young girl ingenue, and they sneak off to be together. And then just list the remaining characters. We have the nuns here, the house staff, the children, and then a couple other people, and then a bunch of nuns and neighbors and contestants in the festival. I want just to list these so we're aware of them. I'm not really as focused on what they're doing because except for singing in groups, these characters don't really sing. Now the children, you can argue about that. The Friedrich, Louisa, Kurt, Brigitte, Martha, and Gretel do have solo lines within songs, but basically the people who sing the score in solo or duets or trios or whatever are the people on the preceding page. And these, well, the sisters also have solo lines within a song, but basically these people sing as part of the ensemble or part of group numbers. Not to dismiss that, but just to make a distinction between how I'm considering these characters. So we've listed now our characters. We have the first group of leading, secondary leads, and dance leads, and then we have remaining characters. The next step is, where does it take place? Where does the action take place? In this case, The time is 1938. The place is Salzburg in Austria, and specifically in Nürnberg Abbey, the home of Captain von Trapp, the Salzburg Festspielhaus, Festival House, and of course the Austrian Alps, who can forget. So outline, when and where is this taking place? Next step is to go right into the first scene. We have Act 1, Scene 1. In this case, the show opens with the sound of the nuns singing their daily hymns, which is a sequence composed of the Mono chant, the Dixit Dominus, the morning hymn, the Angelus bells, and the Alleluia. The lights come up during the sequence to reveal the day-to-day activities in the abbey, and as the sequence of music concludes, the scene ends with calls for Maria. So the nuns are looking for the absent postulant here. Act 1, Scene 2. The scene begins in the mountains with Maria singing the title song, The Sound of Music. As the song ends, she realizes that she's late and rushes out to return to the abbey below. Now, I'm not going to go through every scene in the show. In fact, I'm going to now skip to Act 1, Scene 7. But before I do that, I just want you to notice that I'm not looking for a ton of detail. I'm looking for how the music fits into the storytelling of each scene. We don't need a lot of detail as long as you understand that point of fact. And I would like you then to list each of those. For example, let's jump to Scene 7. And we can see that in Act 1, Scene 7, the scene begins with a thunderstorm and Maria in prayer. Gradually, the children come into the room afraid of the thunder. Liesel sneaks into the window, from her rendezvous with Rolf. And in an effort to quiet the children, Maria begins the song, The Lonely Goatherd. Soon all the children join in and the scene closes. So the scene basically builds to this musical number, which, by the way, is different from the film, again. So being clear about writing for the theater, in case you're looking at a show that you only know from film. Being clear about what goes on in the theater and understanding how the music fits into the scene. So, creating this document that we want to create, I would like you to create a word processing document for each of these 3 shows, which basically is an outline. Once complete, keep your outline as a word processing document. In other words, we don't want to print a PDF or anything, because as we move through the music lab, we might look at certain points in each show more in depth. At that point, we might go into that given scene and explore some elements of it in more detail. So at that time, you may wish to revise your thoughts on the action in a scene or a given moment. Meanwhile, listen to the scores to the shows to become more familiar with all of the songs, because ultimately what we're looking at is modeling the music. And for me, the music is storytelling, and this is an example of how we can really think about the music as being storytelling. The Sound of Music is another show which generates songs that people have played and sung subsequently. Obviously, Do Re Mi is sung a lot by all kinds of groups. My Favorite Things was picked up by John Coltrane and is a major jazz standard. And different kinds of lives for these songs have emerged. And so we might know these songs without even thinking about what their original dramatic intent is. And while that is true of this show, it may be also true of the show that you're doing. So we want to peel that away and look back at the source material. So I hope that gives you some idea of musical modeling. This should not be something that stymies you or gets you stuck in a place where you can't continue. It's really, again, a point of reference for us, a way of really beginning to think about how the music functions both structurally and in terms of storytelling. And I hope will be a great point of reference for us as we continue through the music lab. Thanks.